So after all this time, the Harle we've encountered has been an imposter. With the return of the real Harle, will he exact his revenge against the god that faked his identity? His return allowed us to recruit him into our ranks as a welfare 5-star Windblade unit. As a unit, he is quite interesting, as he is the only unit that is able to harm his teammates in order to defend himself through the damage diffusion ability. A very fitting ability for Harle indeed. Enough introduction, let's see what else he is capable of in a team. Harle's first skill, Raven's Ridicule, deals 1500% damage to frontal enemies. On the surface, it seems to be a simple damage dealing skill that has a decent cost of 2640 SP. However, when the skill is used to iframe enemy attacks, this skill's attack will stop, and Harle will perform a counter attack, dealing 1400% critical damage to enemies. It's a guarantee crit, so having extra crit damage will make this skill even more powerful. Overall, this skill is one that performs differently when used normally and during iframing, though both forms of damage dealing are able to deal good damage for its cost. His second skill, Raven's Patsy, costs 5000 SP. It grants two forms of statuses, one on Harle himself, and another on teammates. It grants teammates 2 charges of reflexive evasion, which basically is 2 chances of automatic iframing. As for Harle himself, he gets a charge of the Watanabe effect, which provides damage diffusion. Damage diffusion basically nullifies damage Harle receives, with 50% being blocked, while the other 50% is received by teammates. This form of damage ignores shields, and can bring down a teammate if HP is too low. Another note, reflexive evasion granted to teammates cannot dodge the damage received from damage diffusion. This is the only team supporting element from Harle, considering that he is tagged as a support unit. He provides evasion support, but also screws his teammates in order to save himself from damage. You must be wary of the HP of teammates before using this skill, else at least one of them will be brought down. Overall, a cunning skill that benefits and harms the team at the same time. Harle's co-abilities are unremarkable, consisting of the typical 10% strength increase and 6% water resistance when HP is above 80%. As for his abilities, he has one exclusive ability, which we'll go through last. Harle is resistant to freeze, which in my opinion, is inferior to Bog resist, as Bog is annoying to deal with. As a welfare unit, having a Bane ability is typical of average units under the welfare unit class. For Harle, he has Demon's Bane, fitting as he'll be fighting demonic bosses in the event. His exclusive ability, Raven's Vengeance, applies the critical vulnerability debuff to enemies when their attacks triggered the damage diffusion effect from Watanabe of his second skill. This debuff allows Harle's critical rate against afflicted enemies to be increased by 50%. Clever use of his second skill and this ability will ensure a lot more critical hits onto the enemy. For a support unit, Harle does a shitty job in provide good support to his team, besides the reflexive evasion buff. However, his skills and exclusive ability are all about guaranteeing or increasing chances of dealing critical damage. With that in mind, critical damage is of top priority for Harle. Other typical offensive abilities should work well on him, especially skill damage, as his first skill can deal massive damage. For his dragon of choice, any dragon with offensive capabilities will do well on him. But honestly, why would you equip him with an incredibly powerful dragon when you can equip it to anyone else that's much more powerful? Nonetheless, I personally had Voke on him in the clip, but I prefer Veu, as his first skill has high damage modifiers. As for his teammates, please have a very good healer on the team at all times when having Harle in the team. His Watanabe is able to deal damage to his teammates, especially when blocking a high damage attack, so having a good healer to recover lost HP quickly is necessary. Having defense buffers is good too, to block damage from enemies, while receiving damage from Harle's damage diffusion. For his Wimprint setup, these are what I currently have on him. I have a typical offensive setup for him, with emphasis on critical damage. As a welfare unit, there isn't any high expectations on Harle. However, his incredibly unique mechanics and playstyle does make him a fun unit to try out, albeit tedious when using him against powerful bosses. His first skill has great damage potential, especially when the animation is interrupted just before it ends, allowing at least 3 hits from the typical damage hits in, before initiating the counter attack. His unusual playstyle may become a form of weakness, as this makes him a bit more difficult to use and master. Also, his lack of dispel and damage over time afflictions lowers his chances of being in a team meant for battling powerful bosses. But overall, Harle is an interesting character, both in his kit and story. He may not be very viable in endgame, but he is quite fun to use once getting the hang of his unique style. Now go out there and stop the revived Satans from wreaking havoc. That's all from me. Moga out.